Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosovich, George Stoya here from the Soonerscoop.com studios. Welcome to the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel. Brent Venables met with the media alongside Jedd Fisch today in San Antonio. I guess you could say that's kind of the start of Alamo Bowl month, if you will.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. They fly those guys out all the way to San Antonio to hold a press conference, which it looked like there was no one there in attendance.
Well, they took all the questions off of Zoom, correct?
Yeah, they were all on Zoom, which was an interesting way to do it. I'm sure Brent's out recruiting down there, too, a little bit. I'm sure we can get into that a little bit later. But,
sure.
Yeah, we finally got to ask Brent some questions. Obviously, a lot going on. You got the Dillon Gabriel stuff. You've got Danny Stutsman news that we broke last night on Soonerscoop.com. So it was nice to finally kind of hear from him on some of those subjects.
Didn't talk about John Rahm headed over to Live, but I'm sure that we will be able to get into that here the next couple of months. The big story here in Norman, though, outside of the Dillon Gabriel stuff that happened on Monday, and it seems like the Dillon Gabriel stuff was like months ago now, with everything that's gone on between Monday and today here on Thursday. But, that's kind of the bit. Real quick before we get into the Danny Stutsman stuff, great time to join Soonerscoop.com. The portal is madness right now, and Oklahoma already has a portal commitment in Spencer Brown from Michigan State, an offensive tackle expected to kind of jump into the right tackle position for Oklahoma, a la Walter Rouse a year ago, but we'll get to him here shortly. Just for $1, that is 2 months, Soonerscoop.com. Really good time to join, as we are going to be headed down to the Alamo Bowl, as well as the OU basketball team that is playing extremely well as early National Signing Day. All you got to do is promo code OU1 for 2 months of Soonerscoop.com for $1. Pretty good offer there for the YouTube viewer. All right, the Danny Stutsman stuff. I think that we've been both, hand up. We were dead wrong on this as we were recording.
I think a lot of people were.
Yeah, no, sure. I think that there was a lot of people that felt like Danny Stutsman would be returning to Oklahoma in 2024. We reported on Wednesday night. Kerry Murdoch did a bunch of the reporting on this as well, that he's headed to the NFL, and he had that conversation with Brent Venables. I think let's just start here. Brent Venables was asked about it on Thursday during this Alamo Bowl press conference, but just kind of your overall take on the situation. I think it's go ahead and then I'll give you my thoughts.
I was pretty shocked. And I mean, I even said literally yesterday on the unofficial 40, I thought he was 100% coming back, and that wasn't based on intel. I just thought it was a no-brainer decision to come back. You look at the year Danny had, it was a really good year, no doubt about it, but you finished the year with some injuries, kind of some sloppy play to end it out. You look at how last year went. He didn't put out a ton of great film a year ago, and so you thought, okay, he could come back, put together a great year, a great season, compete for the Butkus Award, and maybe improve his draft stock. But it sounds like he liked his draft grade that he got back, and he ended up, making a decision on deciding to leave, and he hasn't made that decision publicly. We haven't heard that yet from him specifically, but all indications are he's leaving. And even I think Brent's answer today, because I asked Brent straight up about it today, and it pretty much indicates that he's leaving and that they've already had that conversation.
Here is Brent Venables when George asked today about Danny Stutsman's status.
Yeah, everything has its time, and whenever Danny is prepared to let everybody know what his future is going to look like, out of respect for him, I'll reserve, comment, for that moment in time. But all that being said, Danny had an amazing year. As good of a leader as we have on our team, as good of a leader as I've been around, his passion, his love, his respect that he has for his teammates and his teammates have for him. Leadership is I've never looked at it as a position. I think it's about action, and he's represented everything that you would want from a leader. He's made everybody around him better, and there's not a player in our locker room that loves the University of Oklahoma and respects his opportunity and what this has meant for him and his life more than Danny Stutsman. So I got great thankfulness and appreciation for everything that Danny represents and what he's done to help us, the last 2 years.
99 tackles, 16 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, as well as an interception. He had 40 more tackles than the second guy on the Oklahoma team. And, just talking to people, close to Danny, it seems like this is a decision that, while it was a surprise to both of us, it seems like this is a decision that, he obviously didn't take lightly. I think that he's been playing very banged up throughout the back end of the schedule, starting with the Kansas game, in which he had to leave, right before halftime or tried to come back after the rain delay, I think it was, and I think he only played one play. But, it seems like he's pretty confident with where he is in this draft class. I think that the next couple months are going to obviously be spent, even if he was coming back. I guess, and completely conjecture on my part, I don't even know how healthy he would be to play in the bowl game. It seems like this is a thing that you look at what he was able to do here at, a 3-year starter. Obviously, the last 2 years, he's kind of taken the lead in terms of the leader of the defensive unit, the leader of the team. I think that it's somebody that we had talked about as the soul of kind of the Oklahoma football team, Team 129. But, he did lead the Big 12 in tackles a year ago with 125. I think that, he had put himself in pretty good position as somewhat of a second-team All-American in a lot of postseason situations this year, George. It just seems like the time is now, or he feels like the time is now, even though we might not feel the same way and agree.
It's always a tough tough conclusion to come to, I think, for these guys, because you get these draft grades and you see them and you say, okay, well, maybe I'm a second, third round draft grade, and you got to go test well and all that stuff. But, I think what goes through their mind as well, I'm banged up, especially in Danny's case, I got hurt at the end of the year. Do you want to go risk that next year and getting more hurt and maybe ruining your draft stock instead of maybe improving it? And especially at a spot like linebacker, it is hard to improve your draft stock. I mean, linebacker is not a position that is typically, drafted highly. You're usually getting taken in the, third round, second round, third, fourth round, somewhere in there. And so I don't know. I mean, maybe Danny thought he couldn't improve his stock more. And so
I think that would be accurate.
Yeah. And so I think it's a tough decision for him to make. And it sucks for Oklahoma from their perspective, because I think they all thought inside that building he was coming back. I even think that, even a week ago, he had been telling some people that he was coming back, and then he got his draft grade, and I'm sure he got convinced that it'd be best to leave. So where Oklahoma goes from now, you do feel really good about the young guys in that group. Kobe McKenzie, Kip Lewis, Jaron Kanik, 3 guys that got a ton of playing time this year. And if they can make the leaps like Danny did from year 1 to year 2, then you feel really good about it. But, I think right now you have to look at that group and say, okay, it's a lot of inexperience. What is that going to look like? Do you go out and you get somebody in the portal? I know they've offered a couple guys in the portal at linebacker. So going to be really interesting to see how they try to replace Danny, because like you said, he's really good on the field, no doubt about it. He knows this defense. He was the voice in the middle of that defense, but also just a guy that, his leadership meant a lot to this football team. So how do you go about replacing that?
Well, I don't know how many times we sat here when he was injured, whether it be in the Kansas game in the second half or the Oklahoma State game, that he couldn't go because of the injury suffered in Lawrence, and they were a completely different defense when he was out on the field. I mean, I think that
there's
probably
a lot of people
speaks
that,
to something.
I mean, as good as the defense played in Bedlam and in even the second half of Kansas without Danny at times, I think there's a lot of people out there that say, man, if Danny plays in those 2 games, maybe OU's 12-0. That's a realistic thing.
Sure.
Like maybe they beat Oklahoma State if Danny's out on the field, and that's the kind of the emotional lift that I think he provides for this team.
It was something that we talked about, and especially after that injury, it seemed like he was extremely beat up. So anybody that, I think would try to twist this and say that, Danny Stutsman quit on the program or anything like that, it's just, that's a bunch of BS. I think that there's nobody, and Brent said it, that, loves the university, and he just feels like it's time.
Yeah.
And I get that. Like, he's played 3 years of college. In some regards, maybe it is time, and maybe we were blinded by the idea, or at least I maybe was blinded by the idea that he was going to come back and it was going to be some type of legacy storybook final hoorah going into the SEC and all that kind of stuff. So Danny Stutsman's not the only guy, though, that has the decision to make. Billy Bowman's one of those guys. Tyler Guyton technically is one of those guys. He has yet to make an announcement regarding his future. He hasn't made an announcement, in terms of opting in or out, truly. And then another guy that has a decision to make is obviously DJ Terry, as well as Jacob Lacey. Billy Bowman, Jacob Lacey, DJ Terry. Those are probably most likely decisions that are going to be made further down the road after
Yep.
you get out of the Alamo Bowl.
Billy Bowman's the one to watch for me. Of those guys, if you can get Billy Bowman back, especially now losing Danny, he's somebody that I think can be an All-American type safety for Oklahoma. I mean, you're talking about maybe one of the top safeties, if not the top safety in the country next year. And he's somebody that I bet is going up on draft boards right now. I mean, the way that he finished the season, you talk about the 3 pick sixes, the 6 interceptions to lead the country. He's somebody that if they can get him back, it would be massive. And then you mentioned it, DJ Terry and Jacob Lacey. Those two guys, I mean, if you can get a couple veteran guys up front on the defensive line, a position that they're looking at very hard in the portal, that would be huge. But, man, Billy Bowman's the one that you've got to think. If you're Oklahoma, you're having those conversations every day with him. You're talking about NIL money, all that stuff to see if you can't convince him to stay another year because he's just a difference maker back there. And I think the part for these kids, Eddie, that sometimes we get lost in, their dream is to play in the NFL.
Sure.
So when they get these draft grades back and they see that they've got their chance and it's there in front of them for the taking, I'm sure it's really hard for them to be like, well, I guess I should go back one more year and see if I can't get a better grade. I mean, especially if you're getting a second or third round grade. It's hard.
It's an investment, too,
Yeah.
isn't it? Just in terms of what they're going to have to put their body through.
And it's a risk. It's a risk.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
It is a risk. You're talking about 15 bowl practices. You're talking about, at the end of the day, as much as I probably don't completely agree with the take, it's a meaningless exhibition game.
Yeah.
And then, as much as we'll talk about how important this game is, at the end of the day, that's what it is an exhibition game against another team. And then, you have to go through a summer with Schmitty. You have to go through an entire season to get healthy. I think for a lot of these guys, it is a big decision to make. I certainly was never in that position to have to make that. But, it's going to be interesting for a number of those guys. Just in terms, we're going to get to the Dillon Gabriel stuff. Just in terms, I know we've talked about it, unofficial 40, going off script here a little bit. Guys that maybe will opt out of the bowl game. Certainly doesn't seem like Danny Stutsman's going to be. I know that, just waiting for that to become officially official. Tyler Guyton, there's a question mark. Andrew Rain was somebody that we had talked about on the unofficial 40. Mm-hmm. Anybody else that, and outside of the guys, obviously, that have entered the transfer portal as well, like a Key Lawrence. I wouldn't expect him to be available to play in a bowl game being in the portal right now.
Honestly, I don't think they're going to have a ton of opt-outs.
Sure.
I mean, nobody comes to mind. I mean, you think of a guy like maybe a Rondell Bothroyd who's out of eligibility and can he really improve his draft stock by playing in this game?
Yeah.
I'm not sure,
But for somebody like that, I would expect him to play.
I agree. No, right. I'm not saying he's going to.
Yeah, I was just clarifying.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of seniors really that Woody Washington, would Woody play? He strikes me somebody that would want to play in this game.
Right.
But at the same time, I also thought Danny would play in this game. And I think the injury stuff is kind of what's hindering Danny from not playing in the game. And then you talk about declaring. So I don't think Tyler Guyton's going to play. I know he hasn't announced anything about leaving early. I'm pretty positive the plan all along was for him to leave early after this season. And I just don't think there's a whole lot of benefit for him playing in this game. And I think OU honestly likes Jacob Sexton, and Brent said it today at his press conference. There's a lot of young guys that they're going to get their first career starts, and a lot of young guys that they're going to play a lot in this game. I mean, that's kind of what these bowl games are for. Like you said, it's meaningless in terms of win and loss. I mean, you want to win because you want to feel good and momentum, but a lot of it is getting to play a lot of young players. I mean, you think back to last year, allowing Gavin Sawchuk to play in the game. I think Nick Anderson, Jaden Gibson got a lot of run in the Cheez-It Bowl a year ago. Like, that's what these games are used for. Yeah. And so I think you're going to see Oklahoma kind of lean towards more playing some of these young guys rather than some of these guys that are on their way out.
I would also say that, I think for Danny, it's more about getting healthy enough to go participate at the combine.
Correct.
If that's what you're going to do. You're going to go into, declare yourself eligible. It's all about getting ready for the combine and, what that would bring to, his job interview, basically, an opportunity out there. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if, he were not to play in the Senior Bowl or something like that, which I'm sure he would be invited to. But health-wise, it's just not a great situation right now. Somebody that we don't think will also not play in the bowl game is Dillon Gabriel. And obviously that story came out on Monday morning. Dillon Gabriel had entered the transfer portal. And, as much of, again, another surprise for us this week. That seems like that was kind of the theme of the week. Brent Venables did talk about it on Thursday, and here that is.
That hasn't been finalized yet, so I'll comment on that when it's the appropriate time. But Dillon's been amazing. He's obviously played his best football this year. We wouldn't have put ourselves in this position and had the kind of success we did, certainly the turnaround that we did from year 1 to year 2 without Dillon and all of his hard work, his leadership, his commitment. He made everybody around him better. So, really, really thankful and proud of Dillon, and he's going to have whatever is next for him. I promise you, he's going to have his hands all over it. It's going to be really successful transition for him.
Damn Zoom. Our colleague Justin Hawkinson, I believe, up at On 3, has already put in a prediction for him to end up at Oregon. That was something that we talked about on the Instant Reaction on Monday, right?
Yeah, it seems like everything's trending in that direction, and it makes a lot of sense for Dillon. Again, plug and play for a year. You look at what Oregon was able to do this year with Bo Nix. You would think Dillon could replicate a lot of that success, especially in Will Stein's offense. Who it looked like Will Stein was maybe in town a couple of days ago here, staying at the Noun Hotel across the street from us.
Beautiful structure.
Beautiful. It's awesome over there. But I think he'll end up at Oregon. We'll see. You never know.
Yeah.
Maybe USC throws a lot of money at him. But in terms of his time at Oklahoma, I really
Dillon, I'm talking to you directly. Don't do that.
Please. We'll have to do maybe do it, because we probably get a lot of views on YouTube for that.
Actually,
that video.
More than welcome to come in here and talk about it.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
you do. I have some ideas that you could rub off on Lincoln Riley. But
maybe a double agent.
That would be interesting. And I would be for that, but we kind of hope that he ends up at Oregon. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, I think it'd be great, and I think that he would do really well there, and they'd win a lot of football games, and it'd be awesome. In terms of his time at Oklahoma, though, I think that he will not be playing the bowl game. Like, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for him to commit somewhere else here, and I think we could know maybe by the weekend or early next week where he's going to end up. Like, it would be really awkward for him to play in the bowl game for Oklahoma, and I think OU looks at it as an opportunity for Jackson Arnold to kind of get his feet wet as the starter in a new offense, and I don't know why Oklahoma wouldn't want to do that when Brent basically said today that Jackson is the future. They've been planning for him to be the future, maybe not in this exact situation. Brent explains that here in a second about, they always thought he was going to go to the NFL, Dillon that is, and then Jackson would take over, not play another year of college football. But I do think that they're ready to go ahead and move ahead with Jackson as the guy and let him kind of take those first team reps in the 15 practices leading up to the bowl game, and then let him try and have some success. And that's what's going to be really interesting is, what does the offense look like with Jackson running it? And do they set him up? I'm sure they're going to set up some easy plays for him to where he can have some success, so that he can build some confidence moving into next year.
This has certainly been the plan. Brent Venables has been on record as saying, basically just that time and time again here,
the only
especially
thing I
over
would
the last
say,
couple months. Here is Brent Venables talking on Jackson Arnold and Dillon Gabriel, the future.
Well, the only thing I would say, it didn't have anything to do with Jackson. I think Dillon had every intention to go to the NFL. In his mind, this was going to be his last season. He's going to have a great year, put himself in position to go, chase his dreams, in the NFL. And so, he's the best person to testify in regards to how he came to the decision to play another year, collegiately. But quite frankly, we did plan to, again, go into the 24 season without Dillon Gabriel. And Dillon, I think one of the things that he'll comment about is he went through something similar at UCF, with a quarterback there, and he knows the uniqueness of the situation. So, Dillon knows, certainly, he was more than welcome to stay and continue to compete and be, the quarterback at the University of Oklahoma. But that's just what decision that he came to. And again, like I said, he would be the best, person to really go in more depth and detail about what all went into that.
If you kind of put everything together that we've learned here over the last week, and we talked about it a little bit. We talked about it more so on the Unofficial 40 podcast this week, as opposed to the instant reaction right here on the SoonersCoop.com YouTube channel. But, George, I think that it's a little uncomfortable, the whole Dillon Gabriel situation, because I think at the end of the day, you had a guy that, you had talked to his father, you had wrote about it earlier in the season, that this was going to be Dillon Gabriel's final season in Norman. This was going to be Dillon Gabriel's final season in college football. But depending on the feedback that he's gotten from, NFL executives or GMs or scouts or whoever does the grading system, from the feedback he got, and it sounds like not being invited to the Senior Bowl down in Mobile, he's kind of left with basically one option, and that's coming back to college to play football. Unfortunately for him, the plan that had been put in place in Norman, they were ready to move on to Jackson Arnold in 2024. They're ready to begin that era, if you will. And it's just it's unfortunate the way that this has kind of worked out for Dillon. Now, I say that it's unfortunate just because I like Dillon a lot. I, would obviously love to see him go on and have success at the NFL level. But because of NIL and the way that things work in college football that I think everybody's familiar with, he has a great opportunity to make a lot of money next year playing college football.
It's kind of the exact opposite of Danny's situation where he didn't like his draft grade, Dillon, that is. From all indications, he got told basically he would probably go undrafted, which to me is kind of crazy. And not getting an invite to the Senior Bowl is also crazy. Like, he was one of the best quarterbacks in college football this season. I don't know how that's possible, but it's unfortunate, like you said, but I think it works out for all parties involved. I mean, look, Dillon's going to get to go to another great program, put his stamp on it there for a year, probably end up as, one of the top passers in college football history. If he plays the way he did this season and goes to a good program, he's going to have a chance to compete for a national title. He's going to get to, probably play in the college football playoff if he goes to a place like Oregon. So I think it works out for him, and it works out for Oklahoma because they really like Jackson Arnold. As we all know, they think that he can be a superstar, and it's just time for him to take the reins, Eddie. I think everybody knows it, and Dillon included, that it's Jackson's turn. And as much as it's kind of awkward to kind of, I wouldn't say push Dillon out the door, but kind of open the door for Dillon to leave because he was so good this year, I think in the end for Oklahoma in the long run, you'd rather have Jackson Arnold for 2 or 3 years instead of Dillon for one more year, because if Dillon stays, there's a good chance that Jackson hits the portal and you don't get him for 2 or 3 years. So I think that Oklahoma's betting on Jackson Arnold to be a really good quarterback, and I think that's a pretty good bet.
And as you said, I think everybody that you talk to within the program, they love Jackson.
Yeah,
the talent, you saw
it's there.
A glimmer. In spots throughout the season, whether it be Tulsa or, coming in and doing what he did at BYU. There's reasons that they've made this decision. It's not a baseless decision in terms of, a factless decision based off where they want to go with the program.
Right, and there's going to be growing pains. I think him stepping up as a leader, that's, probably that's just a maturity thing. He's going to have to grow in that area. I think we saw Dillon really grow in that area the last year. And so Jackson's going to have to learn, what does that look like? But I think this last year was super valuable for him sitting behind Dillon, learning, how to be the starter at a place like Oklahoma. So I do think he's ready. I think he's going to, like you said, the talent's there. You see him throw the football and you're like, okay, this dude's got it. And I think that that's the part that Oklahoma's really excited about. And so we'll just see, what does he look like as a leader and being kind of the face of the program moving forward.
It's a reason he went and won the Elite 11, took his high school team to the...
he's considered the top quarterback in the country in his class.
Right.
And there were some really good quarterbacks in his class.
No doubt about it. Transfer portal. That's what the kind of the buzz is around college football, especially once we get to bowl season. Oklahoma has 11 players currently in the transfer portal, which obviously means that Oklahoma is going to be dipping back into the portal themselves. We'll talk about Spencer Brown here in a second, but Brent Venables did talk about just kind of this time of the year and retooling a roster that's going to have some spots open.
For the next month, it's kind of like Christmas every day. It really is. I say that. There's a lot of work that goes into it, as Coach Fisch can attest to as well. But it's a little less work than we had a year ago at this time. Not much. We'll probably end up signing, give or take, around 35 to 37, new scholarship players. A year ago, we signed 42 scholarship players we brought in January. So close to another transformation, similar, quite a bit less when it comes to the transfer portal. We'll look to, signed, give or take, around 27 high school players. So I think 20 of them will be mid-year. So that's really exciting for me. We'll have, give or take, around 28, 29 mid-year players when we start in January.
Just your kind of instant reaction to that, because it does kind of lay out maybe an idea of how many numbers they're looking for in the portal.
Yeah, doing the math there, let's say they finish with 27, which is what they're sitting at right now in terms of high school guys. That would leave, if they're going to go to 35, 37, total players, new scholarship players, you're looking at, 8 to 10 guys in the portal, and they already got one in Spencer Brown, like you mentioned, the offensive tackle from Michigan State. So last year, I think they took, 14, 15 guys in the portal. So you're seeing that number go down a little bit, and that's because they really want to build this thing through the high school ranks, which is what, some of the top programs do. I mean, you look at the teams that are in the playoff other than Washington, the Alabamas of the world, Texases of the world, Georgias of the world, Michigan, they only take about 5 or 6 transfers a year, and I think that's what Oklahoma eventually wants to get to. And I think they feel really good about what they're bringing in the 2024 class. I mean, I think they're ranked, 8th or 9th in the country right now, according to On3. So they feel really good about those 27 guys they got right now. Maybe they add a guy, maybe they lose a guy. You never know when it gets around signing day, but I do think they're going to be very active in the portal, maybe not as active as last year, but they do feel like they can go out and get some quality players. And they did last year. I mean, you mentioned Walter Rouse came in at left tackle, did a really good job. You bring in Desan McCullough, who did a really good job this last year, Rondell Bothroyd. So you can go out and get some really quality players, and I think Brent knows that. And again, last year, what did he say? 40-something players, new scholarship players a year ago. They're seeing that number kind of go down a little bit as they build through, again, high school recruiting.
It kind of goes back to some of the stuff that we talked about a year ago, and some of the stuff that Brent talked about a year ago, being very intentional within the transfer portal. And I think that you look at Spencer Brown, Michigan State offensive tackle, 6'6", 310, started 24 games, played in 32 games while his time was up in East Lansing. He kind of fits every one of those boxes. He's very similar, I think, in my mind, to a Walter Rouse, just in terms of what he is going to bring to the program and being able to contribute from day one.
I think he's a good example of what they're looking for in the portal, and that's oftentimes veteran guys that have played at the Power 5 level, mostly guys that have a lot of experience, because you can go out and get a young guy that maybe entered the portal after just 1 year somewhere, but you're taking a risk, right? Somebody that maybe hasn't played a ton of football, and that's why you're seeing them kind of target some of these older guys. I mean, I think somebody that they're looking at, Chris McClellan, the Owasso product, he just entered the portal officially today. He already got an OU offer, played 2 years at Florida, played a lot of football down there in the SEC. So they're looking for these guys that, have a little bit of experience to bring in and can contribute from day one, because while they want to lean on those, young guys that are coming in and they feel really good about their recruiting class, you still got to have guys that have some experience, and you can go get that in the portal. You're seeing guys. Spencer Brown's a great example. He has 1 year left. He wants to improve his draft stock. He wants to go play for a big school. Michigan State's got a lot of turnover going there in terms of their coaching staff and also their roster. So it makes a lot of sense to go out and get a guy that's played a lot of football like him. And I think that's kind of the guys that they're targeting. It's not going to be a lot of young players in the portal. It's going to be guys that maybe have 1, 2, 3 years left that you feel like you can get something really good out of them out of a stopgap year.
Chris McClellan, I think that there's probably reason for Oklahoma fans to feel pretty good about that situation. 6'3", 320, 46 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks in his 2 seasons in Gainesville. You get to tight end. That's a position that we talked about. Jalen Conyers, it sounds like, is down to 3 currently. A guy that Oklahoma fans are, obviously familiar with, 6'4", 270. Is that correct?
That's crazy.
That's what they have it listed at on the Arizona State website. 74 receptions, 846 yards, 6 touchdowns. Samuel Franklin was a name that we talked about on the unofficial 40. Middle Tennessee, or Tennessee Martin, excuse me, rushed for 1,378 yards a year ago, 11 touchdowns. He was up for the FCS Heisman Trophy. I believe it's the Walter Payton Award. There's a lot of names, and then you get into the North Texas guys. There's another Michigan State offensive lineman, Gino Van DeMark, that, they all fit these boxes or check these boxes that you think of when you're talking about an Oklahoma program going out to kind of get them into the program. A guy that is really interesting in light of the Danny Stutsman news today, Chris Paul Jr., Arkansas, 2-year starter, 6'1", 230, 137 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, and 6 sacks over his 2 years in Fayetteville.
a common theme with all those guys. They've all played a lot of football.
Right.
Those are all guys that are very experienced, very productive, and I think that's what Oklahoma's targeting. Again, and you look at those spots. It's tight end, it's offensive line, it's defensive line, and now it's linebacker. Maybe somebody in the secondary as well. But I think you kind of have an idea of what they're targeting. And again, I don't expect Oklahoma to take probably more than 8 to 10 guys in the transfer portal this year, and they're going to be very deliberate on who they take. I could see them taking 2 or 3 offensive linemen, 2 or 3 defensive linemen, maybe 1 linebacker, 1 tight end, 2 tight ends, something like that, and you're already at 8 to 10 number. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's early in the portal. It seems like things are happening fast, but I do think that OU's kind of being patient. They're seeing who else might pop into the portal.
I was going to say there's a couple other guys too that
Yeah.
given the circumstances, whether it be someone from College Station, I think everybody knows who you're talking about, and David Hicks, or maybe somebody else that's off the radar that's going to play in the bowl game or going to play in a college football playoff, and then all of a sudden they look up at the end of December and say, maybe it's time for me to move to another spot.
Yeah, and I don't know when the portal exactly closes. I think it's in January, right?
Yeah, well, it opened
again?
on Monday, and I think there was a 30-day window there.
Yeah.
So I
January
would
4th.
imagine that it is. Yeah, I think that's right.
I think that's right. It's January 4th. So they've got time. There's more guys that could enter the portal. You talk about staff turnover and things like that. You could see kids jump in. You mentioned the playoff teams. I mean,
Tuesday,
you never know.
January 2nd.
January
Tuesday,
2nd, there you
January
go.
2nd is the day that the portal would close, and then grad transfers have until May 1st.
Right.
And then there is an obvious spring portal, which
Right.
is always kind of interesting if a guy goes through spring and ends up wanting to go through that. So January 15th too is the date that you would have to decide if you're going to enter your name into the NFL draft.
So we got a long ways to go. That's
Long
what we're
ways
saying.
to go.
It's early in the portal, and names are going to pop up. Guys are going to commit. Heck, remember last year, Dillon Gabriel, he commits to UCLA, and then he ends up flipping to Oklahoma.
which would be a good time to sign up for Soonerscoop.com. 2 months for $1, promo code OU1. That is 2 months of Soonerscoop.com for just $1. OU1 is the promo code that you will use. And
It's a great time to sign up because
Yeah.
all those names we mentioned, they're all on Soonerscoop.com. Josh has done a really good job of kind of compiling all the guys
each
that
guy
have been
that
offered.
has been offered, there is a kind of a biography about him of what you can expect, how they did with PFF numbers this season, at their school at
Right.
which they were at. So it is a really good time. And then obviously Oklahoma basketball in full swing. The women play UNLV on Saturday at 2:00, and the OU men's basketball team headed up to Tulsa in the BOK Center for a massive game against Arkansas at 3:00. And make sure you're subscribing to the Soonerscoop.com YouTube page. Just click the button. That's all you got to do. Click that button, and then click one more button and subscribe to Soonerscoop.com. Do both. Why not? George has kids to feed.
I do.
You
Not
do?
really, no. I have no kids.
My heart sunk for a second. All right, we'll be back. Bob Prisbill is going to join me for a OU Arkansas basketball, kind of a recap from what was against Providence, a big win, 72-51, as well as this weekend's game. That can be found right here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel. We will be back. I'm excited to kind of talk to some of the new guys. Hopefully we're going to be able to talk to Seth Luttrell as well as Joe John Finley. We still haven't talked to them since they were named offense coordinator and co-offense coordinator with Joe John Finley. So kind of an exciting time, and we will be headed down to San Antonio here before too long, but we will be back for a little bit more football, a little bit more basketball, and then obviously checking in with Josh as things kind of wind down with, getting to early National Signing Day. So for George Stoya, I'm Eddie Radosevich from the Soonerscoop.com studios. We'll see you next time.